Okay, AMA, let's do this. Question 1 from Sun and Palms 85. Wow, he gave 4 questions. Let's go through them. What was the biggest or most difficult project or album that you had to work on? Just because something's difficult doesn't mean it's not enjoyable or you don't feel good about the end product. And sometimes what makes something difficult can be nothing to do with the music. It can be a logistics thing, the number of people involved, or maybe if it's a commission, you might have a slightly prickly client or something like that. Outside of OSC, like my day-to-day work that's also music related, I've been involved in some pretty large sort of theatre style shows, quite intense, quite full on, but then, you know, you're dealing with a cast of 100 plus people and massive rigs and stuff. The OSC stuff, I'd say the live thing that I did last year for Flamingo Fest. I'd never used cameras before, never tried filming myself playing, never used Final Cut before. That was a steep learning curve. That was quite taxing. I did a soundtrack not that long ago for a small indie game, an American football thing. It's done in a sort of pseudo 16-bit art style. He wanted a fully 8-bit sounding chiptune soundtrack, and that really took me out of my comfort zone. Not something I like to sprinkle a little bit of chiptune tonality on things. To go all out like 100% chiptune for sort of 20 plus minutes of music, that was tricky. But that's not to say that I wasn't pleased with the end results of these difficult projects. Right, do you have a favourite music artist, album or song? Yeah and no. I like loads of different artists, and depending on my mood and the time of day and the day of the week and the month of the year and all that. But there's 3 that I can always go back to regardless of what mood I'm in. And normally, like if I'm feeling a bit lousy or a bit fed up, they're the dudes that bring me out of it. I consider them my holy trinity of music, and in no particular order, the 3 corners of this triangle are anything Quincy Jones has been involved with, Ryuichi Sakamoto and Tom Waits. Favourite album or song that you've worked on? Okay, like the first question, what makes something a favourite doesn't necessarily mean it's like strictly about the music. It could be the people you work with, or the client you're working for, or how it's received, or the unexpected successes it might have. For purely self-indulgent, nostalgic reasons, the Sonic the Hedgehog remix album I made called Zoned, indulgent, nostalgic, childhood, binging, joyous. Yeah, and in a similar vein, the 2 Ghostbusters themed EPs I did, The Real OSC, which is a play on The Real Ghostbusters, which was the title of the cartoon. And that music's all inspired by music from the film, stories from the film, and the cartoons. They're probably my favourite. I don't listen to any of my other work. Once it's done, it's out, but I'd say maybe once or twice a year I'll just stick them on and be like, yeah, that was fun. Okay, how did you start making music? There was always a piano in the house growing up, and I'd just hammer away on it, pick out melodies, things I'd heard on the TV and stuff. Started having lessons, wasn't keen. It was all that sit up straight, hold your wrists like this, read those dots, they mean these notes, now read that and play that, and I couldn't connect with it. It didn't feel like music. Ditched the lessons after like a year. But then when I was around 12 or 13, started having lessons again with a different chap. This guy was a real jazzer, real kind of old school, just didn't try and make me go through the grading process, didn't force me to learn stuff I didn't want to learn. He kind of let my interests and my creativity lead and steer, and then he'd kind of stealthily put all the theory in as we were going along, kind of just talk me through things. And after a couple of years with him, I was like mad nerded out on learning all the theory and trying to come up with my own songs all the time. And I thoroughly enjoyed just sitting down and exercising, going up and down major scales and minor scales, and just drilling that and getting that really in. So I'd say early teens, combination of just random enthusiasm that seemed to come from nowhere, and very fortunate to have a wonderful teacher. So that's kind of how I started. And then I went to university and studied music production and actually started recording my ideas. And yeah. So thank you, Sun and Palms 85. Nice questions. And Sun and Palms 85 signs off with, just wanted to say that I really enjoy your music and that I can't wait to see future projects. So respect, man. Thank you. That's really nice. And I look forward to bringing you future projects. I've got quite a lot. It's It's been a frustrating year of delays and rescheduling, all beyond my control because of other things that are going on. There's a lot in the pipeline. Kyle asks, what electronic, synthwave, vaporwave music would you recommend that came out last year? I assume by last year you mean in the last 12 months? Mitch Murder, always. He's like, oh. He is the synthwave, retro wave god, as far as I'm concerned. And I would say his album, which is called Then Again, there's a couple of numbers on that really hit, man. Whew. Very like in the feels, super good. As always, his sound design is just amazing, and mind-blowing is that it seems to get better. You hear it and you think, wow, how could it ever get better than this? And yet it does. The guy is a legend. Thank you, Carl. Good question. Recommended listening. I'll put links to all the things I mentioned down below as well, so there you go. Tom, hello Tom from Donor Lens. Tom from Donor Lens, I talk to quite a lot on WhatsApp actually. We often banter music and exchange ideas and whatnot. Have you / are you planning any OSC live shows? What's your approach to performing electronic music live? Thank you, Tom. Have I? Yes. It was 2018, off the back of Girls on Bikes, which was 2017. I wanted to put out a couple of older projects that were old tunes that I made long before Girls on Bikes, but kind of reworked, rejigged, tidied up, rearranged a bit, freshened up the production value and all the rest. One of them featured a male vocalist who in 2018 was working in a theatre in London and couldn't do the show, so yeah, had to do his songs with the vocals like in the backing track, which was a bit it's not his fault, you know, it's one of those things. And then her EP featured a singer called Caterina Cameglio, who is based in Italy, so it was like, oh gosh. I let her know I was playing this show, and she decided to come over. She tied it in with a visit to some friends of hers in the UK. But yeah, she flew over and she played this show with me. It was just amazing, and I'm very grateful to her for that. I'll put a link to her Instagram. She does a lot of work in the jazz scene in Italy. For my part, I prepared tracks from the EP and a few of older tunes from Girls on Bikes with certain keyboard lines missing, and I just played those live. It was a nice evening. It was a small, intimate venue. I was the headline act as the new Laserdiscs record signing and release. We had a set from Sierra, who is another Laserdiscs record artist, and Absolute Valentine, who is a co-founder and artist on Laserdiscs Records. And Nina, along with her buddy Laura Ferez, I think I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. She now does a load of solo work that's very good as well. They also played a set, so it was a nice thing to do. I'll be honest, my background is playing in like R&B, soul, funk, jazz bands. It felt a bit weird being the only person on stage with all that noise coming out. It felt a little bit like keyboard karaoke. It's not really, it didn't sit comfortably with me. I guess what I want a live show to be is radically different from the studio record. I want to walk on stage with a choreographed routine that feels like Party Central from start to finish of the set. Now, what that needs, in my mind, is a real drummer, a bassist, a guitarist, probably another keys player to go alongside me because there's so many keyboard parts, a percussionist because I have so much percussion stuff going on, and in a perfect world, like, man, let's get like a 4 or 5 part horn section, why not? A few trumpets, a few saxes. That's what I'd like to do. Full live band instrumentation of my stuff. Now, I don't want this to come across as cynical, because I've been to shows where it's one dude and a keyboard and it's like, it's rocked, it's pumped, it's cool. I don't think I quite got enough charm and charisma to pull it off. Either way, like, it's not for me. I want to go on stage with full live band arrangements of OSC tunes. That's kind of my end goal. Now, to make that happen is expensive. One day, the hope will be that OSC is financially viable enough that I can hire the necessary musicians, because I couldn't possibly ask local people I know to do this sort of thing out of goodwill, because it's a lot of work. I guess the way to liken it to is Chromeo recently released a live album. They got I think it was 4 guys along with them, the duo of Chromeo. So instead of using drum machines and certain pre-recorded stuff on backing tracks, they had full live band dudes do it, and that's what I want to do. So am I planning any live shows, Tom? No, I'm not, quite simply. I'm also like, I work a day job 4 days a week. I'm tired. I have a young child. I'm just tired all the time. So yeah, I'd never say never, don't rule it out. It's a skill set and a big bag of experience that I've got in my back pocket if I need to pull on. I've done more gigs than I can remember, but that was with function bands and corporate gigs, that sort of stuff. What's my approach, Tom also asks, to performing electronic music live? Well, I've explained what I did and what I'd like to do. What I'd say is that even electronic music if I'm just using a band? Don't know. It's a whole other debate. If what I do is even electric per se, I use electronic instruments, but it's not electronic music in the way that like Kraftwerk is, or the Stranger Things soundtrack would be, or something. You know, that feels like electronic music. It's the manipulation of the machines, and it's creating the compositions out of the manipulations of the machines. I'm still working on the core principles of like the Great American Songbook, you know, harmonies and melodies and rhythms that I'm pulling in from funk and jazz and that sort of thing. So in a way, I'd say I'm making kind of instrumental R&B inspired pop through a very electronic medium, but I don't even know that I'd call it electronic music. I never think about that sort of stuff anyway. I let others worry about genre classifications because life's too short. I hope that sort of answers your questions, Tom. Moving on. Dutch Venom. I have a lot of inspiration, a DAW and some plugins. I want to make music. Where do I start? Sounds like you've started, bro, or sis. You have your inspiration, you have a digital audio workstation with plugins, and you want to make music. There's nothing stopping you, man. Get into it. You followed on with that with what should I learn first? So maybe you've got this stuff, but you don't really have much musical experience. Beats and rhythms, honestly, like some of the best tunes in the world are more rhythm centric. You don't need flashy melodies, you don't need flashy harmony. If you get the rhythm, have the rhythm take care of itself, and you know, it'll go from there. Look up a song called Sea Jam Blues. It's an old jazz standard. Wow, big band standard. It's 2 notes, man. It's 2 notes. The melody's like da 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 da, and that's it. Now, obviously, they then use that as a sort of springboard to go off into mad hectic solos, but just that section alone, like, it really romps. It's got such a great vibe to it, and it's 2 notes. So what's important is to program, if you're using a DAW, is to program beats that are interesting and that pop and that have a nice sass to them and a bit of a funk, if that's what you want to make. But there will be countless videos online about programming beats and ways to go about that. So I would start with learning to program beats first, and then let everything go on from there. I always think of beats and rhythms as your Christmas tree. You have to set the Christmas tree first before you decorate it. You can't throw your decorations in the air and hope to stick the tree to it. It doesn't work that way. It will fall apart. Get that rhythmical stuff in first. Dutch Venom also asks, what music do you listen to find inspiration? Any and all music. A chord sequence in a punk rock song can be used in a reggae song, can be used in a jazz song, can be used in a powerful ballad if needs be. There are actually surprisingly few things that most music is built on. So you can hear something in one song or one style of music and go, oh yeah, I'm going to try that in your other style of music. So yeah, I've recently just finished working on a video game soundtrack for a tongue-in-cheek spooky video game, Haunted Mansion. It's kind of cheeky and sassy. Coincidentally, before going into making that, I was listening to loads of ska music, and loads of that has just found its way into this spooky music, because there's stuff in ska that I can take into spooky music. So yeah, just whatever, just anything and everything. Bark to Britney, honestly, there's something in it for everyone, even if it's not the music itself, but how it's packaged and produced and marketed and sold. If it's in the way the artists look and the things the artist says when they're being interviewed or they're posting on social media, you can learn from that. There's something in there, positive or negative, to take away and go, right, okay, that's going to help influence the directions I choose to take. I'm either going to aspire to something similar, or I know I don't want to go that way, one or the other. It's always learning, whatever you're listening to. So that's what I'd say. Go listen to anything and everything. Keep your ears open, keep an open mind, and program some beats. Dutch Venom. And Dutch Venom signs off with saying, love your work, man. Well, thank you. And I loved your questions. They were cool. Rob Dyson. Or Rob M. Dyson, I should say. From Forever Synth, if you don't know. I'll put a link. Very good radio show. Recently just kind of closed off, ended a chapter in their broadcasting lives, but yeah, fantastic show. Amazing support for the whole retro wave, synthwave, vaporwave scene. Very cool show. Rob asks, hey Steve, hey Rob, I'd like to ask how you approach the discipline of composing in style. For example, city pop, vapor funk. That's a new one, vapor funk. Oh, I like that. And do you treat it as a 9 to 5 or work at a certain time of day? Okay, I'll go about these backwards. The 9 to 5 or certain time of day thing, the dream, Rob, the dream is 9 to 5. I need to get a lot more commissions and streams on Spotify and add revenue from YouTube before I can go 9 to 5 with this, sadly. I do it on a Monday. Monday is my day. I work 4 days a week at a normal job. I work at a school where I look after the studio there, and I teach on the music courses, and I make sure the music department as a whole, that their musical instruments and facilities are always in good order and working. So I get to be around music stuff. It means I also get to work alongside musicians. Yeah, so that's like the day job. Come home in the evenings, make some music, steal a bit of time at the weekends, make some music, and then Monday I have the whole day to myself, house to myself. Monday's a day where I really plow on with stuff, although often I don't feel like making music in the mornings. I might use the mornings for like boring stuff, catching up on admin, bookkeeping, stuff that isn't noisy and spontaneous and creative, basically. So how do I approach a discipline of composing in style? For example, city pop. This will come off the back of an album I did earlier this year, which was very heavily inspired by city pop. And how do I go? Rob, imagine me and you go for a meal and we enjoy the meal. We say, isn't that nice? We don't know how the food was made. We just know it was nice. But then imagine we're both trained chefs and we go for this meal and then we go, this is nice. I can taste this ingredient and that ingredient, and I reckon they've used only a little bit of this and quite a lot of that. And a trained chef knows the proportions and the ratios roughly based on flavour. You know, they'll eat something and they will know what's gone into it, even the subtle little things, and how much of this and how much of that they'll have. And so if you ask them to recreate the dish, they could probably get close and with a little bit of practice recreate it almost exactly, because they've got, 10, 20 years of training and experience behind them. I guess it's like that. So when I listen to a city pop record, I can hear, firstly, you can hear certain things in the production aesthetic that you identify and you're like, all right, yeah, I'd need to use things like that. When you've nerded out as much as I have on music production over a lifetime, sort of 20 plus years of reading up about this stuff and experimenting and immersing yourself in this world, you hear effects on things, you're like, oh right, that's that, that's this, that's that. And not only that, but you kind of have an inkling and an idea of roughly how much of that thing has been applied and how it's been used in order to create that. And then the same goes for melody and harmony and rhythm. You know, those core founding kind of principles of music, where you'll hear certain rhythmical techniques be used and you can recreate those. You'll hear certain harmony techniques used, you just recreate those. There's tropes, common trends, themes, that sort of stuff. So you listen to a bit and you start to see patterns emerge, and you just use those patterns in your own way. And so you create that same style, that same flavour, just albeit through the lens of your ears and your hands. And yeah, I hope that answers the question a bit. But ultimately, experience and practice and knowledge. Knowledge is power. Be a nerd. Screensaver. Rob also says, also, your collaborations with Neverman have been brilliant. Thank you. I do enjoy working with Neverman. David, he's a very nice chap. And Rickard, he's the other dude who's sort of behind the scenes on this. Who would be a dream producer or artist to collaborate with in the future, both in synthwave and outside of synthwave? Well, in synthwave, Mitch Murder. My gosh, imagine. Just, I'd love to go, hey Mitch, I've got these chords and melodies, here you go, and just hear what he does with it. And likewise, I'd love to go, Mitch, give me your stuff. And I just want his kick drum sample so I can steal it. Oh my days, his kick drum is just, his kick drum and snare are just, love them. Literally to this day, like every few months I go, I'm going to make my own version of Mitch Murder's drum kit and it's going to sound identical, always fail. I can't get close. Dude's like, whew, magic. Outside of genre, Quincy. I don't even need to collaborate with him, man. Just go for a coffee, like, and just be in his presence and hear his stories about the music he's worked on and the television and film he's worked on and all his civil rights activism. And oh man, just want to be around that man. He is a god among men. He's like a once in a generation type of person. Thank you, Rob. Great questions, dude. Right, Sonoko asks 3 questions. Growing up, what artists were your main inspiration and how have they influenced your work today? Growing up, now that's the point there, because if you just said 3 artists, I'd have said I've covered that already with my holy trinity of Quincy, Sakamoto and Waits. But no, growing up, that's because that's different, isn't it? Your tastes change, and when you're a kid, you're like really into one thing and you go mad for it, you hyperfixate on it. So it's the 90s, everyone's listening to grunge rock, Britpop or gangster rap. And I'm just going home after school and playing C-Jam Blues on the piano and listening to Oscar Peterson, feeling like a right dork, like nobody gets me, man, nobody understands. There's so much in me that nobody gets, all the usual teenage existential angst nonsense. And then I discovered Ben Folds 5, who had all that punk sentiment of 90s grungy punky rock, right? But they were a 3-piece with Ben Folds on piano, who is an amazing pianist, like most pianists, has a little bit of jazz in him. They had Darren Jesse on drums, who's a jazz drummer. I did go and see them live when I was like 15, and he sits atop the kit, with the toms laid really low, and he plays, is it open-handed when the stick's like that way? So instead of playing it like that, you're playing it like that, I don't know, I'm not a drummer, but yeah, he was playing like that. And then Robert Sledge on bass, and Robert Sledge is a songwriter and producer in his own right, mostly works in the indie rock circles, but he's the kind of bass player that, although being like an indie rocker with a little bit of a punk attitude, he'd think nothing of turning up to a recording session with his double bass and bow it. So you'd got this crazy band that kind of were a bit punk, but were also really sophisticated, like songwriting things. I don't know how to describe it, man. But yeah, they were super cool. It's punk on a piano, a touch more sophisticated than punk. Not to put punk down, but punk's thing is that it's simple and accessible, and Ben Folds 5 probably wasn't. But man, yeah, I nerded hard on that. Learned to play a lot of his solos and the flashy stuff on the piano. It's like, yeah, this guy gets me, I get this guy. And so that was one of them. And then moving on from him into my later teens, Ben Folds is a very good storyteller, very good songwriter, and so I got into storytelling songwriters, and the two big hitters after that were Bob Dylan and Tom Waits, both of whom I went in hard for. I'd start with the earliest stuff and work my way through and gradually try and catch up to modern times, and read biographies, found documentaries, had to buy DVDs and stuff, like, it's really hard on them. All three of them, loved them. And they're all storytellers, aren't they? They're telling stories. They're not doing all this mopey, like, oh, she left me, I'm so sad kind of music. Everything's a story. There's context, there's aesthetics, there's scenarios. I guess, that maybe that's their lasting influence on me, is the idea of trying to tell a story. I know what I do is mostly instrumental, there's not much lyrical stuff, but I'd like to think that between album art, song titles, and what I create with the tunes, that there is a story to be told within it. But it's kind of, because there's no lyrics, it's up to the listener to be a little bit more imaginative and to fill in some of those gaps, whether it's like Girls on Bikes, Boys on Boards, him, her, the recent Yume Namachi, even the Ghostbusters ones and the Sonic the Hedgehog ones. Like, they have a tangible story. At least I think they do. I hope they do. I don't know. I could be digging myself in a hole here. People listening thinking, what's he on about? Anyway, Sonoko asks, when did you start making music? I've already covered that one, I think, back earlier. And do you still have unreleased tracks from when you first started making music? Well, yeah, like a lot, but you don't think that I'm like hiding away some hidden gems that sound great. I'm really not. Occasionally an artist lands on the scene and they're great, and then people delve in and they find some early demos and they're great, and you're like, wow, this guy's amazing. Most people no, that's not how it goes. Most people, all their early stuff's rubbish, really rubbish, and rightly so. Like, you shouldn't be good straight away. You should hone your craft and take time to get half decent. I started writing my own songs when I was about 14, and I used to write lyrics, play the guitar, play the piano, come up with chords and melodies, like a song a day almost, from the age of like 14 to 19 till I went to uni, and then started partying too much to write a song every day. But I had books and books of it, and when I got to uni and started learning how to record, I'd start recording some of those songs. You'd sort of butcher what was there, so like 5, 6, 7, 8 songs worth of stuff you'd hack away at bits, and you'd reform that into one better quality song. But still, it's rubbish. It's just rubbish, and production value is through the floor. Bad. Arrangements are messy. Even in the early OSC stuff, the production's rubbish and the arrangements are messy. Like, yeah, just no. Don't worry, it's there, but it sits on a hard drive along with like a bunch of old stuff from uni that nobody is interested in. Like, I'm trying to sync on it and everything. It's really bad. Yes, I do, and no, don't even go there. I'm not showing anyone. Moving on. Thank you, Sonoko. You signed off with saying, keep on making music. Big fan of your work. Thank you, man. That's nice. That's surreal in a way to think of. Big fan. It's good. Right. Next one is from someone called Environment. I would love to know what you think about the future of live performance. Given everything that's going on, the personal value of gigs, concerts for both the artist and the fans feels much greater, even though streaming reaches bigger audiences. How do you think things will go, and do you think it's important for smaller artists to gig more? Oof, that's a heavy, big question, bro. Okay, let's pick this apart. I would love to know what you think the future of live performance is. It's good. I think the live performance industry's taken an absolute kicking and real beating because of COVID. That's without a doubt. Venues have shut, businesses have gone bust. I know it's hard to like think long term, but I do, because I think with everything that goes on and all the noise on social media, not just music but just life in general, I think always keep in mind the bigger picture of this is going to sound a bit hippie-ish, but the big picture of the universe and the history of mankind, and what we're doing right now is like the blink of an eye. So everybody be cool. It's going to be okay. COVID's been rough. It really has. the live music industry has suffered, but the enduring human spirit to perform music hasn't disappeared. That has not suffered. We found a way to do it through technological formats in the absence of a space with which we could do it. And that's one I mean, come on. Archaeologists, they find cave paintings and they find evidence of like primitive flutes and drums. Humans have been making music and performing it probably since before we were even cave painting. Who knows? Like, man, it's fine. Humans will find, as Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park says, life will find a way. Live music will find a way. Okay, so I don't really worry. I think there's enough good spirit and enough creative desire in humans, even after like the zombie apocalypses and meteorites, and we're living in a sort of desolate post-apocalyptic wasteland. We'll still be jamming some tunes in some way or another. We'll find a way. We'll be improvising drums. And given everything that's going on, the personal value of gigs and concerts for both artists and the fans feels much greater. Right, given everything that's going on, I'm guessing, are you talking the mixture between COVID and the overall state of the music industry? Sorry, I'm going to be a bit pernickety and not understand the question fully. I think the COVID thing I've kind of addressed, but what this brings to mind for me is that everything that's going on, the music industry, let's wind back 20, 30, 40 years, artists gigged to promote album sales. Today, what's the point? Albums sell for £4, if that. Everyone streams them anyway, for which you earn like 0.0000 penny, like whatever. Like, there's no money to be made in streaming, and because streaming exists, nobody buys your album, so there's no money to be made from either of those things. The money lies in going to concerts, and so ticket prices have gone up. Going to see concerts live used to be dirt cheap. My mum's told me loads of stories about when her and her brother used to go and watch The Who, and things like every other week they'd go and see another big name band, the Animals, the big whoever. They used to go, like growing up in the 60s, they saw some of the most famous big epic rock bands in the history of 20th century music for like pittance. You can't do that today for the big famous acts. That's, dare I say, gentrified. They're so expensive. I think like Elton John and Madonna tickets are like literally hundreds and hundreds of pounds. You know, the working class has been squeezed out of that. The mainstream music is shrinking. All the big old famous people are going to die off. And modern mainstream music has shrunk in terms of its diversity. I don't mean like racial diversity, I mean like musical diversity, on account of risk-averse investment tactics from record labels, which is a symptom of internet piracy and the drop in profits that happened in the early 2000s. So mainstream music has shrunk, but because mainstream music shrunk, the alternative has become bigger, and it's become emboldened and found more outlets through Bandcamp and just DIY musicians like me just going out on the internet and going, hello, I make music, please listen to me, I need a little bit of money so that I don't have to do my day job 5 days a week, thanks. And that's the future, man, and I think that's okay. Gigs will keep happening in whatever way, shape and form they do. For the little guys, the gigs will be the great access points for finding new audience. Live streaming will be the wonderful access point to bring people in countries that you can't otherwise get to experience your music. It will make your music accessible to the people who can't afford to get to gigs, even cheaper gigs. It democratizes things. It levels the playing field, and there will be a new normal, as everyone says, which will involve small bands independently doing their thing, managing their own promotion. People far more creative than me will come up with wonderful ideas to do stuff and how to do it, and it's going to be cool. And I'm quite happy just watching it all unfold, sitting here making my synthwave. I hope that answers your question. It felt a bit rambly, and I don't feel the best qualified person because I'm not in the live gigging scene. I just kind of observe it from afar and go, oof, wow. Okay, so environment. That was a cool question. Could probably be a video all in of itself, really. And environment signs off with saying, thanks for your time. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, bro. I am doing well. And you're welcome. Like, thank you for the question. Last question Foxmar says, would love to see a tour of your studio with details on what hardware and synths you use. How much do you do inside/outside the box, and what your general recording process is. Whew. Now that's like several videos in of itself, so I'll do a real fast whistle stop tour. But some of the stuff you mentioned there, in your defense, you won't have seen it at the time of submitting that question, but I've actually just recently written, and will, by the time this video comes out, will have published a couple of blogs that address exactly that. I've got a blog article all about inside and outside the box and what I do and why, and a lot of my instruments are detailed on my blog under the OSC toolbox category, but there are some additions which you won't have seen yet, so I'll spin the camera around quickly and talk you through that. So let's go. The sound might go a bit different because I'm moving around the room but not taking the mic with me, so apologies if the voice gets a bit roomy. Now this here, if the camera wanted to focus, is my Roland Jupiter 50. This is a workhorse, and I can't remember an OSC tune that didn't use it on something or other. It's an absolute beast. This is my Yamaha DX21. That is a poor man's DX7. It has a YM2612 FM chip, which is the same thing as what's in a Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis for the American people watching this. And yeah, you can recreate Sega Mega Drive patches on this with a bit of system exclusive faffing. That's an acoustic guitar, it's a Taylor. I've had it since I was 18 years old. That is a Squire Strat, and that's my Telecaster. That is a Piranha Plant lamp. That is a Father's Day card from my son with my logo on it. Speakers of choice, Mackie HR624s. Love them. I've used them in some form or another for about 18 years. Like, they really are fantastic speakers. JV 1080, awesome bit of retro synth rack mounted goodness. Under that is a very dusty, because I haven't used it in I don't know, 12, 15 years, SPL Vitalizer. It's got no retail value secondhand. It would be more effort to sell than just leave them in my rack for the time being. One day I'll probably find a use for it. That's my JU06A, love that thing. That is a very, very cool thing. That tomato looking thing's a shaker. And secondary monitors that I use for referencing, there's some little Genelec things, some random SE large diaphragm condenser that I got ages ago for reasons, I don't know. Over here, there's a preamp, valve preamp compressor. I tend to run bass guitar and other bits and bobs through that. I got that because the preamps on my audio interface are shot. This display doesn't light up on my audio interface. This interface is from NARM. It's seen some serious stuff and some things. It's a Motu 828 Mark II. I think it's getting on for 20 years old. It's beat up. I rescued it from the bin and patch bay beneath that. I've thought about investing in a nice mixer and having all my keyboards hooked up, but space, I just can't accommodate it. And there's a virtual mixer in this, in the Motu, with a bit of software that links up to it. So I've got everything kind of half normaled on my patch base. Everything's hooked directly into the interface through the patch bay. And then if I want to just hijack a way in, I just patch into its output there and then just run it into whatever channel I want to use on the audio interface, and that's that. Some headphones, because headphones, that's just a MIDI controller with weighted keys that I use for my electric guitar stuff. There's my Nord Electro 2, love that thing, just does electric pianos and organs and clavs. It's the Electro 2. Nord are currently on like the Electro 5 or 6 or something. It gives you an indication of how old that thing is, but it's more than enough for me. That's a resonator. I bought that 16 years ago or something. I was really into blues at the time. This is a vintage V4 imitation P bass, and I've got flat wound strings on that. I don't know if the camera can make that out. Hopefully that's a bit of a tour. That should make sense. Go read the article about inside and outside the box. I make the sounds outside the box and I process them inside the box. There's a list of plugins that I use on the blog article, so yeah. I won't go into it here, it's boring. I think that's kind of it. So, right, would love to see, done, yep. Foxman signs off by saying, would be amazing to round out your AMA with a little live performance. I wanted to make this like a nice, quick, snappy, easy to make video where I just talk for a bit and then splice it together, and I will program a beat and I will jam a little bit and maybe make like 90 seconds or something. I really don't retain what I do, so I compose it, I'm like in the zone for a couple of days while I'm arranging and engineering it up, and then I kind of shelve it and go, right, good, yeah, okay, and then that gets released, and then I forget about it and I don't remember. So like when I had to do the lockdown live thing last year, I actually had to relearn my own songs. Couldn't remember what I'd done, so apologies in advance. I'm not going to pull out an old song and just like play one of your favorite OSC tunes. I'll just make something up on the spot and jam it out and then stick it at the end. But it's getting late, so I'm going to get on with that. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. If you're still here, congratulations for putting up with it. And yeah, it's YouTube, you know what to do, down the bottom, all that stuff. Yeah, so yeah.